Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Stan Lee's Lucky Man, Season 2, Episode 3. So, really, this episode honestly feels like this episode is kind of on the short end of a story. Like, this episode felt like a very weak story, in all honesty, for this episode. And I'm like, man, like we have Golding in this episode. Golding reappears. So like maybe he might be in this episode for just a second, and maybe just to tease Golding is to do something, or really they might also just go and just like have Golding here as just a throwaway character, and so maybe that might happen with this review of this episode. So going into this, really, there is like having them like forcibly like tying certain people in this episode of retying certain people. Like Eve does have a little bit of a story in this episode. Rich is back for a little blip of an of this episode, I guess, to like have people remember. Hey, remember people who were technically tied to Golding in this episode? Let's bring them back for one little bow here, and then like we'll see them in the next like 12 episodes from now. But in this episode, we have an interesting killer. Killer is to be a butcher in this episode. So I guess people could possibly be won over by that. Really, overall, this episode is kind of a hard sell, but hey man, they're trying to do something really creative compared to the first season, and I think every episode is going to have this like goofy gimmick or hook or something with it. And I guess I could be fine with that. I guess I could just go, okay, like, so what's going to be the next goofy gimmick that's going to go into the next episode or next kind of story that's going to like have this like certain kind of like thing for an episode to be interesting. And again, I like probably in the last review I like praised them for like having these goofy gimmicks, because I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of won over by these goofy gimmicks. But like in this episode, just the writing just like was just kind of like, let's try to just toss some things together because this person seems important in this season, so we have to figure out how to like craftingly like write them into this episode when they have no real true tie to certain people that have been in previous episodes, meaning previous season episodes. So with that said, yeah, like, so in this episode, there is to be a butcher in a Sweeney Todd like reference. If you know the Johnny Depp movie Sweeney Todd, you might know how exactly uh, this episode is to break down because it is similar. And I think it's kind of funny that I think they ended up tossing that reference in there to, I guess, basically showcase maybe where they got this reference from. Like really just saying like, yeah, this is just what we came up with. So, Sweeney Todd reference. But anyways, yeah. So let's go. Like, I think we should just immediately go into spoilers because if anything, like this episode is really interesting. I would say for people to go out of their way to watch it, especially if you watch season one, watch this one, watch this episode. This episode is like, hey, maybe quite possibly some like closure moments from season one or whichever. Like really, like I'm trying to be saying this cryptically, but go and check out this episode for anyone who had saw any episode of the first season. So go ahead and check this one out because there's a whole reason behind it. So let's go into spoilers about this one because I probably at this point should be like, why am I even teeing this up for anybody? Like, it's either you like the show or you don't. Like, I've been through so many reviews now that it's like, it's either you're with me or you're like bizarrely just like, I just want to see Bracelet Show like review. I don't know what it is, but this Bracelet Show is just like bangers. But that's fine. Thank you. I appreciate you guys consistently watching these. So whether they're heavily detailed or some day where I'm just like, man, I'm feeling the burn here. I just need to like just chillax with all the like just stuff. So let's get into this. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time we to spoil this review. So in the very beginning of this, we are to have Eve be jogging her way into this episode. And so Eve is jogging her way into her place to eventually have Goling just arrive in Eve's place. And so while Eve is to get Julian like distracted, Eve is to go and grab for her gun, and Julian is to like present himself like, go ahead, hit me, baby, hit me with those sweet bullets. And Eve is to go and to start like shooting her gun to have no bullets coming out. And so Julian is to toss all the bullets down on the ground and just like, you really think that I wouldn't come in here and like check everything? So what is to end up happening is that Julian with his goon is to grab Eve and go on to have Eve be taken, sadly enough. So that is the transition to like what kind of they're going to focus on in this episode. But anyways, let's transition. So Harry is to meet up with Isabel, and so I guess conveniently both Harry and Isabel are at a place where there are to be like this fountain like show where they're like consistently like going off like at this certain pattern because there's a bunch of like fountain like things spouting out at once. And so Isabel's like, hey, like come with me like through these fountains and or through this like fountain like show. And Harry's like, like if anything, I don't want to get my like I don't want to get my like my blazer and stuff wet because Harry always wears like like as if he's going to the office every single day of his life. And so like you never see the man once in like a t-shirt and jeans and like he's just like, yeah, I'm burly man. You. Like so because I guess he just assumes he's going into work every single day of his life. So, Harry and Isabel are just like Isabel is saying like, well, like I have the perfect way for you to be able to experience these whole fountains without actually getting wet. So Isabel and Harry all of a sudden have this like this dance that they are having, which conveniently has Harry like go and skip every single rung of all these fountains when they are to spout off, as if they like choreographed this to a T. And so all of a sudden, while Harry and Isabel are doing this little dance, all of a sudden Anna is to have her boyfriend and see just Harry out of the blue, and Anna's like, Harry? And Harry's like, oh, Anna. And so all of a sudden Harry ends up getting hit with this fountain show. And so both Harry and Anna go on a, I guess, double date technically. And so really, like Anna is talking to Isabel, and you can tell Anna's like, I don't really like Isabel. And so like while they're talking and eventually while Harry's to get to know like this new man in Anna's life, it kind of gets to where like both like Harry's to talking about like, man, I would rather just put a gun to my head. And then eventually like someone else starts talking and Anna's like, hey, like if you're already done with that gun, like let me like pass it over here. Like so, And so, like, these people's dialogue, like, Anna's kind of getting on the nerves of, of Anna, because I think Isabel, like, thinks that Anna isn't right for Harry, because, like, Isabel is digging her claws into Harry like it's nobody's business. It's insane how much, like, digging of the claws that she's doing with Harry. So, uh, eventually this whole double date is get interrupted with uh, Harry needing to forcibly be on another case. So Harry is to go with Surrey, and so like Harry was like eating a meal, and so Harry brings the meal in with him, and he's just like, "What's going on, Surrey?" No, Mom. So, like he's looking for a bin or a trash can, and he's like, "What's up, Surrey? What's going on? How's it going?" So Surrey is explaining that the victim is Anthony Johnstone, and he is to supposedly had died of a blood clot, and supposedly there had been human flesh within his body. And so Harry is like, this dude was a cannibal? And so, like, Surrey is like, well, no, like, we need to figure out the real true case of this whole thing, and the doctor is going to explain it. And so, Harry is just going, and so, like, Surrey's like, how about you just scarf that thing down so, like, we can go, and, like, like, they always have to have these, like, bizarre-ish, like, transitional moments here. And with Harry just like, I'm not. So, pushing on. So, Harry and Surrey are to go to this doctor. And so, they explain that this guy is to have a blood clot and had died from that, but he had, like, human flesh within him from some person. And so, they're like, well, like, is this cannibal person, like, does it seem like does it like would it seem like this guy's been like having a steady diet of this? And the doctor's like, well, yeah, like it might actually seem like that, and this guy may have been completely unaware of this whole human flesh that is being coursing throughout his body. And so they also find like there are actually like pieces of pie in this guy's system, and so more than likely, like, this might have just been a bad timing for this guy to die, because eventually Harry and Surrey are going to have to go to some pie vendor or pie like seller, like some woman that is to like just make pies and give it to people. And so Harry and Surrey go to this woman that is to be selling these pies. And so this woman is like, oh my god, like my pie shop is ruined, because if any of this word gets out, like I am never going to be able to sell a pie again. And so really Harry is like, well, where did you get the human flesh from? Like, where'd you get your meat from? And so this woman is like, well, of course, like I get what I get like fairly cheap, like at a real bargain. And so like I eventually found uh this butcher, and he sold this to me. And so like Harry and Sir are like, oh, okay, like we can probably like triangulate and figure out uh where like this is like where this is going. Uh so now there is to be another, I guess, moment of, I'm trying to think where this is going. So, uh Golding. Golding is to be out and about, and so reasonably he is to have Anna. He is to have Eve, kind of just, uh, like held away and kind of just like jail, like, or kind of like celled away, and so we really have just that moment kind of quickly to mention. Um, so really that, like, I'm having like goofy moments here because I know there's something with Golding here. Like there might have been a Golding sighting or like something along those lines because eventually, uh, oh maybe there was, oh no wait, that comes later. So yeah, so there's something with Golding, but I don't remember exactly what it was. Uh, so moving on to Harry and Anna. So uh, Harry and Anna are to have this dialogue, and my brain is freaking like foggy about this whole thing. Uh, Harry and Anna are having a thing of dialogue. Oh my god. Let me pause here for a second. I just might need to just like gather my thoughts for a second. Okay. I had to take a second. I was like, "Oof." Like, so what ends up happening is, there is a Golding sighting because what ends up happening is that there was a camera that was to spot a van that was to, uh, go on and kidnap Eve. And so nobody knows what it is, but it seems that Julian like looked right into the camera for a while, and people are just like, yeah, like that's a guy that's not worried about getting caught. So what ends up happening is immediately Winter is to go into like his prep of things like right before or right after like Harry and Anna are to have their dialogue of like the whole situation, like, hey, like Golding's back in town, like, hey, I'm gonna make sure that you guys are safe and like have a detail on you and all kinds of things, and so on and so forth. Uh, and so Winter is to do his like preparations and to basically tell Harry that he cannot be involved in this case. And so Harry's like, say what? Like, I can't get involved in this case? Like, I should be involved in this case. If anybody should be involved in this case, it should be me. And Winter is like, I'm sorry, but I can't have you be on the like I can't have you be on the Golden case. If anything, like you'll go and be back onto the case that you were working on, and forcibly Harry has to work with Orwell, and so like Harry's like, oh my god, I got to work with Orwell. Like this is like the worst day of my life. So first off, Orwell is to figure out that the guy that was inside this guy who had died from a blood clot, the flesh was of Adam Sykes. So both Orwell and Harry go to Adam Sykes' home to go and blacklight this thing and try to find any kind of blood samples and like see how like the strikes or the hitting of these blood spatters were to go on. And it seems like this guy had like really professionally like cleaned this thing up, and it seems very weird. So uh And so Adam Sykes, like, we could kind of see where blood spats were hitting, and like they were really like aggressive and professional and whatever. And so eventually, this is to lead Harry to ask. It's like, well, so where did this like woman get her meat from? And oh, also they found out that coincidentally Adam Sykes had been doing like some like bonding, like bail bonds. Like he, I guess, had tried to do some like counterfeit like bearer bonds, I guess, for the Russians, and so like that's what led them to have the black light to see if there's any kind of like chemical stuff that this guy used to do any of this. But eventually they found blood instead. So but that leads them to go to the butcher shop. The Smithfield is the name, and so eventually that leads to Harry going in this butcher shop, and Orwell is like going like, "Dude, I'll see you in a month. Like this is gonna take us forever. This is like a needle in a haystack." So Harry is to go and like use his thing of luck to go and toss a coin and follow it. To I guess see where this coin is to fall could probably be the culprit of all this. So Harry is to start asking this guy questions and like is trying to see what his answers are, and it seems that eventually uh like this butcher guy is to like want his like spot like clean and cleansed and whatever, and because Harry is to start touching parts of the table, and this butcher guy is like, hey, like don't touch the table. It's like I'll have to forcibly disinfect all of this if you touch it. And so Harry is like, well, yeah, I'm sure you'll have plenty of chemicals to do that in your van, right? Like, hey, let me go and check out your van. I would love to do that. And so the butcher is like, okay, sure, we'll go. And so all of a sudden, like the butcher is to also is start to swipe at Harry and kind of knock Harry back. And so he's desperately calling for backup. And I guess Orwell is just like right there. So this butcher guy is to basically run out of this spot. And so eventually all the other police make their way here, and so immediately what they do is they look into Golding's van, the van that they saw earlier. And so eventually like Winter uh is to pull Harry aside and like talk about Golding and talk about everything that's kind of going on right now. And so eventually Harry is to mention like about identity, and so is Winter like talking about this identity stuff. And so eventually Surrey is to find out that the person that Golding had snatched was Eve, and Harry knew that all along. And Surrey was like, wait a minute, like, I'm technically still your partner, and you didn't tell me this was this person, knowing full well, like, I would be looking for this you knew this person, but you said nothing. And so Surrey is trying to, like, if you know something, Harry, tell me now. And like Harry is just like conveniently just like, I'm not going to tell you anything, sadly enough. So eventually Harry is to bizarrely like check in with Rich. Like just kind of like Rich is like, why are you even here? Like I told you last time, I want nothing to do with you. And Harry is like, well, like I love you and I missed you. Like I wanted to just see you again. And like Rich still has a pretty good like bruise on his eye. So uh so Harry is like, hey man, like if anything, if you ever need like If you ever need anything, like, hey, like, how about we go out for some beers? Like, I'm buying. like, hey, like, we can go out sometime. And like, really, that doesn't lead anywhere. That doesn't like lead Rich into danger or whatever. But like, it's just like, hey, like, remember when Rich was tied to this whole Golding thing? Well, we're gonna retie him in. So Harry is to after talking to Rich. Harry is to go with Isabel and like really spend some time with her to where she starts to like reveal things, like mention about her past and mention how she used to have two girls and so Isabel is saying that Harry might go way may go way far onto this case than he would want to, just because of how Golding had like gone after his wife and his daughter, and that eventually Harry is probably going to be the guy that is to find Golding and take him out. And so it gets to the point to where like Isabel is kind of almost like disturbing Harry to the point of him saying like, you know what, I just don't want to be around you right now. Like I think I need to be away from you right now. And so they separate, and Isabel is just kind of like, and Harry is just like, oh man, I'm gonna get out of here. Like this is an awkward spot. So uh, Julian is now having like is now angry with this butcher because it's like, oh man, you blew your cover. Like if anything, like I guess we now have to like press Eve to like figure out how we can get like to take down Harry in some way or another. So this butcher is to take an Eve, a knife to Eve, and so Julian is just like, hey, like if you could figure out some way to beat Harry, now's the time. And so Eve is to say like, well, there is another person with a bracelet, and so like that's going to lead you to want to use this woman to help you defeat Harry. Like she can help you defeat Harry, and so like you can go after her and like she'll like help you kill Harry. So uh there's another moment with Orwell and Surrey like back at it again with these two people. So like heaven forbid I actually remember what the actual dialogue was between these two, because good god, every single time it's normally a forgettable bit of dialogue, because normally it's Orwell just saying like, hey man, I'm just making amends, and Surrey's like, well, do your job. And like, and that's most of the dialogue that they're having to hear or they're having here. Uh but eventually they do have a dialogue exchange, but heaven forbid I actually like, good god, my memory is getting severely foggy, I guess because of how like technically late it is. So they do have a dialogue with one another, and I think there is some importance to it, but let's move on. So Golding is to break his way into Isabel's place, and so when Isabel is to show up, Golding is like, hey, like I know you have the bracelet and I know exactly what that is to do, but I need you to get me to Harry. Like, I want you to use your bracelet to get Harry to me. Like, because I have Eve and I am going to kill her. Like, if you do not get Harry to me and help me kill him. So, Isabel is like, okay, sure. Like, I'm going to go and retrieve Harry to give him to you. And so Isabel is eventually trying to help Harry like she normally is with every case. And so Isabel is like, you know what, I think I have some wicked vibes on this case, Harry. I think I can help you find Golding. And so Harry is to go to a spot that is to have the bird symbol of doom again. And so Harry's like, yeah, this must be the place. I think I'm getting vibes just like you are, Isabel, because my bracelet power isn't, I guess, as strong as yours. So, anyways, uh, so pushing on. So it seems that there was uh, a oh the Orwell and Surrey situation. Uh, Surrey was to eventually figure out that Golding had to not have a normal bank account like everyone else. That it seems like he is trying to get his money specifically from some place, and so some from some bizarre app or something, and so Orwell and Surrey are trying to narrow down exactly where Golding is going and consistently doing this. And because they spotted him on some uh, camera somewhere, retrieving money. And so eventually Surrey is scouring numerous cameras to find anybody that looks like Julian, and it's taking forever. So eventually they are to spot Julian again, and so they're like, oh, okay, we've triangulated the position, and all now we need to figure out is when eventually Julian is to make the phone call again, like and his phone being on, they can pinpoint exactly where he is because there was only three certain phone signals that were to triangulate Golding's position. It's a weird way about trying to figure out where Golding is. It's freaking weird. So, uh, so Harry is to make his way with Isabel into this spot, and we have the butcher who is to put a bag over Harry and suffocate him. And so uh, Harry is to be latched down with his arms because the butcher is going to chop off Harry's arm, so that way Golding can get the bracelet. So really, they're just kind of slowly prepping for Harry to eventually lose his arm. And Golding is yeah, thinking how, what all he's gonna do with this bracelet, and yeah, he's gonna be a man about town with this bracelet, and everything's gonna work out because the bad guy wins in the end, I guess. So all of a sudden, bizarrely, we have these birds that kind of just fly in, and all of a sudden ruin this butcher's chances at being able to kill Harry. And coincidentally, the butcher's blade goes into his own head, and he dies. And so all of a sudden, we now have a numbers game of just Julian, and so both Eve and Isabel are next to Julian, and so now Eve is jumping onto Golding and just starting to beat the crap out of him. All of a sudden, there's a knife on the ground, and Eve is like, I am going to stab Julian. And Harry's like, no, don't stab him. You're going to regret this for the rest of your life. Don't be a monster like he was. Don't do it. And so, really, so that leaves eventually Isabel even tempted to go and take down Julian herself, and Harry's like, no, we're gonna do this the right way, we're gonna have him pay for all this. And so both Eve and Isabel are to leave, and so Harry is to put Julian in the place where Julian had put Eve. And so Harry had taken a picture with him and and Golding, and sent it to Anna and said hey, we're safe now. Golding is basically the equivalent of behind bars. Winter freaking comes in and he's like, "Oh my god, you have Golding, you son of a bitch!" like so. So the very tail end of this is to have just Harry and Winter having this like conversation of just like, "Hey man, like since this whole case is finally wrapped up, like Harry, like what's on your mind next? Are you and Anna like are things working out? Like, because it seemed like before when like Anna was knowing about the whole like security detail, it just seemed like she had a gleam in her eye or something like that, and like it seems like she still has feelings for you, Harry. So Harry, how about you go after that Anna? How about you chase after her? Because obviously, like this, like you and Anna are gonna like should be a couple. So, like Harry is saying, like no, like Anna doesn't really love me. Like there was a point where I think in the Harry and Anna dialogue that they were having in this episode, uh, like uh, like Anna was talking to Isabel to Harry, and Harry's like, well, at least she's fun. And so like that was like the last like, oh, like so Anna's not fun anymore. Like Anna's just not being all like kissy and like, oh, I'm having fun with Harry. No, I gotta be like the bearer of bad news to Harry. So I'm like not like winning him over. I'm not getting his brownie points. So um but so Anna's making her way with her date to some play of sorts or some date somewhere, some fine date. And so Harry is to eventually go to where Anna is and chase after her. But all of a sudden Harry is to see Anna with her date, and so Harry's just like, like you know what, like it's too late. Like maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe like I should just go and just like end up with Isabel anyways, because dual bracelets, baby, the power of bracelets compel us. So Harry is to just go to Isabel, and like it seems like they're just like there's something about these people that they're just so like comforted in one another's like presence. So Harry is to ask Isabel, it's like, well, hey, like, what are you doing here? And Isabel's like, waiting, like, always waiting for you, Harry. It's like, Harry's like, well, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to plant a big old smooch on you and say, like, maybe I've been waiting for you too. So both Harry and Isabel kiss, and that's like what ends the episode, and I think that's what will end this review. So, like, it'll be interesting to see where this relationship plays out, if there will even be a relationship, which I don't think that this relationship is going to last. I think Isabel is eventually going to transition to someone else. I think Harry eventually is probably going to eventually be back with Anna, but probably not in this season. Probably more like towards probably somewhere in the next season, probably. But anyways, I am gonna get out of here. I apologize if this was kind of like confusing or whichever. This is a late hour for me, so like I went into this probably at the wrong time. But like I was like, dude, if I don't do this now, like I may not remember anything of this at all. So like I am going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.